Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, Bachelor Nation News. Fans, Grant Ellis approached the fantasy suite dates on The Bachelor with caution, saying he wanted to be responsible and intentional about intimacy. "It's a lot," Ellis said on the March 6th episode of the Vile Files podcast. "Fantasy suites are really tricky, but I think I handled myself very well." Ellis, who had one of the highest numbers of first-night kisses in the show's history, said he was mindful of how physical connections could alter emotions. "I do feel like there were a lot of kisses, but fantasy suites, I really reserved myself because when you get physical intimacy involved, it changes things. Your connection with somebody, there could be red flags, and then you have sex, and everything could be wonderful." Going into the final dates, Ellis said he focused on making thoughtful decisions. "My expectation was that I didn't go in saying I'm not going to, but I had to know that this person was my person in order for me to engage. At that point, I didn't know who." Ellis's final three contestants are Juliana Pasqua, Latia Garr, and Zoe McGrady. When Vile's wife and co-host, Natalie Joy, suggested that meant Ellis abstained from sex, he was vague. "I didn't say that directly. I didn't say I did other things, but I handled myself well, you know." You agree you are 18 or over. We use your sign-up to provide content in ways you've consented to and improve our understanding of you. This may include adverts from us and third parties based on our knowledge of you. Unsubscribe at any time. More info. Ellis also acknowledged the pressure that came with being the franchise's second Black Bachelor, following Matt James. "People are going to think I'm a player or this or that, or that I'm trying to get my rocks off. I wasn't. I went in there with real intentions, and prior to that, I was celibate for a year. I got out of a 7-year relationship and I was hurting, so, sex is great, but I wanted to make sure it was with someone who was my person, and then we could fuck all the time." He previously shared a similar sentiment in an interview with Us Weekly. "To me, being the second Black Bachelor means giving a voice to people that might not typically watch this franchise. They might see me and resonate with the way I speak or some little things that I say. Sometimes in culture, it's not looked at as cool to be really smart. I want people to see that and be like, okay, you could be a Black man and you can take your education seriously. I just want to be a role model." Ellis also told the outlet he was confident in his final choice by the
Grant
hometown
Ellis. A year of celibacy before fantasy suites, his most shocking confession yet. The promise no one knew about. In a franchise known for champagne toasts, whirlwind emotions, and steamy fantasy suite confessions, The Bachelor Season 29 took a hard left when Grant Ellis, the season's charming yet surprisingly grounded lead, dropped a bombshell. He hadn't kissed anyone or done anything for an entire year before fantasy suites. Not even a date. Not even a flirtatious moment under dim lighting and cozy blankets. In an era of oversharing and instant gratification, Grant's revelation came as a shock to fans, producers, and the final three women who had no idea they were vying for the heart of a man who had vowed celibacy long before the season began. Grant Ellis, the 31-year-old former tech entrepreneur turned author and motivational speaker, had captivated audiences from his very first rose ceremony. But this wasn't just a story of romance. It was a journey of discipline, emotional healing, and the kind of restraint that Hollywood rarely glamorizes. And his reason? Heartbreak. Not the kind that turns people bitter or reckless, the kind that brings them to their knees, forces them to look at themselves in the mirror and rebuild, piece by piece. From heartbreak to healing. The year before becoming The Bachelor, Grant had been in what the tabloids called the perfect relationship. Photos of him and his ex, actress Mila Caraway, had once dominated the celebrity gossip columns. They were seen at movie premieres, weekend yoga retreats in Tulum, and even attending marriage counseling workshops, ironically before ever getting engaged. But it fell apart. Messily. Publicly. What fans didn't know was that Mila had left Grant 2 weeks before he planned to propose. Her reason? You love the idea of forever, but not the work of it. Grant was blindsided. At the time, he blamed her, but during the months that followed, he found himself spiraling inward, re-examining every failed relationship he had ever had. For the first time in his life, he asked himself what he had been offering emotionally and what he had been avoiding. "I had to sit with my loneliness," Grant would later reveal in a confessional clip producers sat on until the week of Fantasy Suites. "I had to realize that I'd been using sex to dodge real vulnerability." And so a month after the breakup, Grant took a vow of celibacy. For 12 months, no physical intimacy, no exceptions, not even on New Year's Eve when a supermodel reportedly threw herself at him at a party in Paris. He stayed true to his word, and when the Bachelor producers approached him mid-celibacy, he made it clear the show could document his journey, but he would not be pressured into physical intimacy before he was ready, emotionally or spiritually. They didn't believe him, until he proved them wrong. The women who didn't know. The season was already historic. Grant Ellis was the first Bachelor who refused to kiss on night 1. While some contestants panicked, others, especially fan favorite Letia Gar, found it refreshing. "I thought he was just old-fashioned," Letia had said, smiling during a group date confessional. "Turns out I had no idea what he was really doing." Juliana Pasquarosa, the season's frontrunner and eventual Fantasy Suite pick, admitted she thought Grant was just building tension for drama. In private, Grant wrestled with how much to reveal and when. "I didn't want to weaponize my celibacy. I didn't want the women to think I was morally superior or that I was testing them. It was my journey. They were on theirs." But the Fantasy Suite week loomed like a thundercloud, and Grant knew the truth had to come out. The first reveal to Jesse Palmer. 2 days before heading into the tropical haven of TK Howe for the Fantasy Suite dates, Grant asked to speak to Jesse Palmer off camera. That conversation, which was only partially filmed due to Jesse's insistence on transparency, became one of the most buzzed-about scenes in Bachelor history. "I need to tell them," Grant said, looking visibly anxious. "Not just that I've been celibate, but why." "You think it'll change how they feel?" Jesse asked. "I know it will." Jesse leaned forward. "Then let's get ahead of it." It wasn't just about optics anymore. It was about honesty, and Grant knew honesty would come with consequences, especially in a Fantasy Suite culture often reduced to lust and expectation. The women react. The first woman to be told was Carolina Quixano, a surprise top 3 pick whose fiery debates with Grant became meme-worthy. The moment he told her about his vow, she didn't flinch. "I respect that," she said calmly. "But why now? Why us?" Grant opened up for the first time. About Mila, about how he used to use sex to hide from real connection, and about how that year of restraint had taught him more than any relationship ever had. Carolina nodded. "That's growth, and it's hot." But not everyone was as understanding. Letia Gar, beloved for her warmth and humor, was confused. "So, this whole time, when I thought there was this romantic buildup between us, you were actively avoiding intimacy." Grant tried to explain, but she looked crushed. "I would have appreciated knowing sooner," she said, eyes glassy. "It feels like I was writing a love story, and you were journaling a solo chapter." The most dramatic reveal, however, came with Juliana. Juliana's Fantasy Suite. By the time Juliana reached the Fantasy Suite, the internet was ablaze with rumors. Reddit threads speculated Grant was a born-again Christian. Some claimed he had taken a secret Buddhist vow. Paparazzi even tried to bribe his ex-girlfriends for confirmation. But Juliana, unlike the others, wasn't surprised. She said, "I knew something was different about you. I could feel it." Grant opened up completely. "I've waited a year to be intimate with someone again. Not just physically, but emotionally too. If I choose you, it's not because you won the show. It's because I've grown into the kind of man who can love for real." Juliana didn't say anything. She just kissed him. Soft, intentional, and slow. They didn't sleep together that night. But they did something far more vulnerable. They talked until the sun came up. After the final rose. When the finale aired and Grant chose Juliana over Letia in a heart-wrenching decision that had Twitter in chaos, fans finally understood why. He wasn't chasing butterflies anymore. He was building a foundation. Juliana, sitting beside him on the After the Final Rose stage, confirmed they hadn't had sex until months after the show wrapped up. She said, "We wanted to be sure that we weren't just attracted to each other, but aligned." Grant added, "Love isn't measured in fireworks. It's in restraint, patience, and how someone holds your hand when no one else is looking." The audience gave a standing ovation. Even Letia, watching from the wings, smiled with tears in her eyes. What happened next? Months after the season ended, Grant and Juliana were still together. No rushed engagement, no post-show scandals, just two people slowly building a life. They started a podcast called Slow Burn, where they interviewed relationship experts, spiritual leaders, and other Bachelor alums about intimacy and emotional growth. Grant's book, The Year of Stillness, debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Critics called him the most emotionally intelligent bachelor of all time. But Grant wasn't interested in titles. He was interested in being ready. The industry reacted. Producers at ABC were stunned. Ratings had skyrocketed. Fans had connected with Grant on a deeper level than ever before. But more importantly, the narrative of The Bachelor had shifted. No longer just about who got the final rose, but how love was earned. Jesse Palmer said in an interview with People, "Grant Ellis changed the game. He showed that love doesn't always mean passion first. Sometimes it means discipline, growth, and patience." Even former bachelors weighed in. Sean Lowe tweeted, "Finally, a bachelor I can let my sons look up to." Nick Viall? "Celibacy? Not for me, but damn, Grant made it look cool." The legacy. 1 year after the finale, Grant and Juliana got engaged, in a quiet garden surrounded by family. No cameras, no producers, no hashtags, just love. When asked about the fantasy suites now, Grant laughs. It was never about saying no to sex. It was about saying yes to something more.